Yeah, I know Hollow Knight and Silksong have their own parry function, but you know what's cooler? The Cross Stitch. Cross Stitch is one of my favorite new abilities added in Hollow Knight Silksong, and it far surpasses the parry you do just with your needle or with your nail in the first Hollow Knight. That always felt like kind of a neat detail to save yourself from unwanted hits because you were spamming and you just got lucky and managed to hit someone else's nail or needle. Cross Stitch is a full-on mechanic meant to reward people looking for good timing and just having a second before they're about to get hit to press a button. And it is very confusing what it does and doesn't parry. To begin with, it seems to work on almost every damageable object and attack in the game, and yet you can go up to hazards in the world of Farloom, try to parry them, and you'll find the parry doesn't activate on them. It's not that confusing. I think it makes sense for Hornet not to be able to parry static objects, because it's mostly meant to parry attacks. And by the way, you can see my silk is refilling. That's just because I have a mod on to do so. If you don't have mods, you can use the Egg of Flelia and the Weave Light to give yourself an infinite amount of silk skills. Any silk skills really, but specifically Cross Stitch, in case you want to do a parry only run. But for my purposes, I don't want to wait to show off the things I'm trying to show in this video. I came to fight Grandmother Silk because she showcases some of the best abilities that Hornet can and can't parry with the Cross Stitch. Specifically, because Grandmother Silk has grab attacks, she has basic attacks, she has attacks disassociated from her body, and she has attacks that can bring in hazards that are different than normal enemy hitboxes. But in case you didn't see how Cross Stitch worked before, you never tried to use it, basically, the second that you activate it, as long as something hits your body, it works. It doesn't have to come from a specific angle. Hornet will automatically turn around to hit it. If it hits Hornet at all, and you've timed it right, you get the parry off. Cross Stitch itself is really fun to use, but it's just objectively worse than other silk skills. It's more of a fun gimmick than it is an overpowered strategy. But fun is fun, and I enjoy using it when I get the chance to. So when it comes to Grandmother Silk and other bosses in this game, any basic attack can be parried, but attacks that are grabs seem to not work when you try to use Cross Stitch against them. Or rather, Cross Stitch doesn't work against the grabs. At the very least, it doesn't work against Grandmother Silk's grab. And if you were to just take what I've shown you in this video so far, you would immediately assume, okay, Cross Stitch doesn't work against hazards, and it doesn't work against grabs. The problem is, things aren't that consistent in Silksong. You have to test on every individual grab and every individual hazard to try and find some consistency. Because while I am taking damage here, you can see you can parry hazards like these rocks. Hazards as a generic term is probably too broad to say you can't parry any of them. Things like the spikes coming out of the ground in this boss room, they seem to not be parryable. However, spikes in other rooms are parryable, and more than just spikes in other rooms. Grandmother Silk herself will bring up spikes midway through her boss fight. She brings up platforms, I believe, after you beat this phase of her health. Her health kind of works in different bars, that's why you can keep seeing me get her down to 0 before she transitions to new attacks. But these spikes that she brings up are fully parryable, and not just by landing on them. If you walk into the side of these spikes, you can parry them. And this is a common way that Cross Stitch works as well, where you can walk towards damaging hitboxes and parry them. It doesn't have to be attacks coming to you. You can essentially create your own parries by finding any enemy that's stationary out in the world, or just any damaging hitbox. However, it's confusing when this does and doesn't work, because like we saw earlier, walking up to the spikes in this room didn't let me parry them, but walking up to these spikes that Grandmother Silk creates does let me parry them. So at this point, I had to figure out where was the consistency, where was the pattern, how do we interact with hazards around Farloom, and how do we interact with grab attacks from enemies except for Grandmother Silk. Because just because it didn't work against her doesn't mean it won't work against the many other grab attacks in Hollow Knight Silksong. So, I moved on to another hazard, first of all. In fact, I probably jumped to the most dangerous hazard that exists in this game, pure molten lava. So, I think it'd be clear to all you dear viewers that you can't really parry the lava that exists on the ground of a lot of these rooms. I did try though, you saw the parry effect go off, and it didn't work sadly. I did want to see if I could parry the geysers of lava though, because those seem to have a much greater chance of actually being parryable. They're moving attacks essentially, like the rocks in Grandmother Silk's boss room, and yet they don't seem to function the same as the rocks in Grandmother Silk's boss room. They're both hazards that fall down from the sky, and Hornet can parry the rocks, but she can't parry the lava. Logistically, everything checks out here. I don't think a steel or whatever metal needle should be able to deflect pure lava. But then again, I don't really know how much logic I should be applying here. If there was logic in this game, I think Hornet would just be dead the second she falls into a pit of lava or into a geyser of falling lava. So it does make me sad that I can't parry lava, because that'd probably be the coolest thing you can do in this game. But I feel like this gives me better insight into how hazards work in Silksong. With the spikes in Grandmother Silk's room, you could see that I could get a parry off, and the second the parry starts, I would instantly fall into the hazards and get respawned away from them. You don't get respawned when you get hit by the spikes that Grandmother Silk brings up in her boss room. Therefore, I think any hazard in this game which respawns Hornet on the nearest platform can't be parried. At least that is the consistency I'm trying to apply to these rules with the cross stitch. Other than that, I think everything else is pretty free to be parried. If it's a hazard that spawned mid-boss fight, any spikes or any little enemies, damaging things that don't respawn you on a new platform, you can go ahead and parry them. But what about the grab attacks that were different than Grandmother Silk's? Before even thinking about bosses, when I think of grab attacks in Silksong, I think of the muck roaches. They terrorized me so in my first playthrough that I can't forget these grab attacks that make up their entire being. And I thought it would be fantastic if I could parry them, but they are a grab attack. And yet, you can parry them. Why is this the case when Grandmother Silk's grab attack clearly bypassed any ability we had to parry and put us straight into the animation that normally happens when we get grabbed? Well, I think that this is because Grandmother Silk's grab attack does not deal damage, but the first grab instance of these muck roaches deals 1 mask of damage, and then you only get hurt the second time once the grab is completed. So, because the first grab has an attacking hitbox, it seems it's able to be parried, even though it is something that would lead you into a grabbed state. So maybe I need to find more grabs that don't deal damage until you get grabbed. Hey, I know some kidnappers who don't harm you until the job is done by sending you to prison forever. Well, they do harm you, but not with their capturing attack. And more than that, these guys have a special spit attack that does 0 damage, but it appears you can parry that spit. It wasn't the clearest because I think I was behind the backdrop there, the foreground, but yeah, the parry destroys the spit globs, lovely imagery, and the parry is also incapable of protecting you from being captured by the slab flies. However, they are kind of a unique beast, so let's try something else. There's another enemy in Silksong with a fully non-damaging grab that we can use for testing purposes. The Barnacks in the Putrefied Duck have one of the strangest grabs in this whole game, one that is affected by things like the warding bell, but I wasn't really confident it would be affected by the parry, because it deals no damage, and as we've proven, well, proven quote unquote, as we've somewhat deduced, it appears that Hornet is not very good at parrying attacks that deal 0 damage to her, but she is good at parrying attacks that deal damage to her. And things like just touching certain enemy hitboxes deals damage to Hornet. So if the grab of the Barnack can't be parried, What about the body of the Barnack? Fully still, not really attacking anyone, but if we just jump into it and parry, based on what we know, that should actually get us to parry. It just, yeah, there you go. You can parry the stationary Barnack, but you cannot parry their tongues. What a massive loss. It's not like we can just attack their feelers, their tongues once, and they go back up into them. It is really fun to be able to just walk into stationary enemies, parry next to them, and just get off my super attack. Although it seems kind of inconsistent if you see what just happened there, my dear viewer. So yeah, as it looks right now, it appears that pretty much all non-damaging grab attacks are unparryable. But why take that as fact? This is a channel that cares about doing tests to prove its hypotheses, and if they are proven false, to accept them, because we care about finding the truth in video game study. I don't know if there's a scientific field of video game study, but I would be a part of it. I would want to anyway. So yeah, Grohl the Great is probably one of the greatest examples of bosses with a grab attack. He has one of the most interesting grab attacks in the game, where he spits and chews Hornet up. It's very interesting to experience, and Grohl himself is big enough to have his own gravitational pull, so he is a wonderful example of just being able to walk into an enemy's side and parry them. But sadly, he is not a good example of breaking the non-damaging grab rule, which I say sadly, but if anything, it just makes me happy that I was able to figure out the pattern with what is and isn't parryable. Grohl's grab, not dealing damage, also seems to imply that it can't be parried by the cross stitch, because there's no damaging hitbox to parry off of. Everything else in this room that deals damage, these spike balls, these enemies, Grohl's own big fat body, all of them are perfect candidates for the cross stitch to use and take advantage of, I suppose. But other than that, I don't really think the cross stitch would be an ideal tool to fight Grohl with. Just use Threadstorm and get the suffering over as quickly as possible. That's my advice, dear viewer. So, I believe I found the rule when it comes to grab attacks and which ones cross stitch doesn't work against. Let's try something new. There's something odd about this image. Could it be that we have not yet killed the boss that gives us parry, and we are going in to fight them with the ability to parry? Yeah, I just wanted to see if Team Cherry called you out or understood that you were cheating by coming into this boss with the ability to parry, and certainly it seems to work fine. And barring that, I wanted to see if you can parry an enemy's parry. I mean, given that they give it to you, Phantom is already well versed in the ability to parry, so can they counter my parry with their parry? They cannot. We can actually parry the attack that Phantom does after parrying us. So basically, we're never punished by hitting right into Phantom's parry. We can just parry back, and in fact it seems to work great as an instant dodge to that parry attack. See, it doesn't hurt Phantom, sadly, but it does dodge all of the damage that their parry would be doing. Not that it's very hard to do so anyway. I think, sadly, Phantom's parry rather, is one of the easiest attacks to dodge. But Lace's parry kind of has similar problems, so fair enough, I suppose. Speaking of Lace, did you know that she is another boss who has the ability to parry? Pretty much one of the only other bosses with the ability to parry. Is Lace better than her sibling? Lace was an interesting test case because her parry comes out much faster than Phantom's. So the question to me became, could I even parry quick enough to counter her parry? And from that first attempt, it seemed the answer was no. That truly it was impossible to parry that attack from Lace if you hit into her parry. Because even if you are quick enough to click the button instantly as your own parry becomes available, it may not become available fast enough. However, if Lace teleports away, it certainly seems doable. At that point, I just have to hit the timing correctly. And I thought at this point in the fight that maybe I didn't miss the timing, and it was in fact unparryable. that even if you can get the timing perfect and somehow manage to retaliate quick enough that you don't get hurt by Lace's parry, that maybe your parry just didn't affect it. It just didn't work for some reason. A foolish thought now that I look back at it, because there's never been any indication that the parry doesn't work on anything with a damaging hitbox, except for some very specific hazards in the environment, which Lace is not a hazard. She is a living being, no matter what she thinks and no matter what she says. But other than that, I was also interested in seeing what would happen if I tried to parry Lace's third phase attack. The attack that somewhat functions like a grab, but isn't exactly a grab because it deals damage to Hornet. And again, I know I kind of established that if it deals damage, you're likely able to parry it, but there's nothing wrong with getting more data and with just proving your point further. You know what I mean, dear viewer? And speaking of that, there's also nothing wrong with failing to parry about 10 different parries that Lace does to you. I say that to make myself feel better after failing so many times. But hey, at least I got to learn that you can parry Lace's third phase grab attack, super attack, whatever you want to call it. And of course you can parry all of her normal attacks just because she's a basic enemy with basic attacks in a lot of ways. But I still at this point did not learn if hitting her parry was possible with my own parry. And that is something I would find out very shortly. And in spectacular fashion, for as the killing blow against Lace, I parried her parried into her death. That's probably the best way that you can kill Lace, in my opinion, dear viewer. So if you take anything away from this video, make sure to kill Lace and Lost Lace in your next attempts by parrying her parries. There's nothing better than out-parrying the parriers. It's just really funny to taunt on her too when you have infinite silk. Man, I wish the cross stitch didn't cost silk. It would just be so much more fun. And I honestly wish you could parry hazards like this smoke too. That would also be very fun, and I don't know if it would really break anything to allow that to be done. But now that I've learned as much as I have in this video, why don't I showcase the cross stitch's true potential? I made this video because I was interested in learning what the cross stitch can't do. And at the end of it all, I've instead learned what it can do. It can do everything. It can do pretty much everything that matters in this video game. I don't have infinite silk on anymore, so everything you are seeing on the screen right now is 100% unmodded gameplay, aside from the health bar, but that doesn't help me with anything. And it's not even me playing phenomenally, it's just me utilizing the parry in the most fun way I can. And I know I've said fun so much in this video, but in the great words of Reggie Fils-Aimé, if it's not fun, why bother? That is what makes the cross stitch such a great ability. It is not the meta pick. It is not the best silk skill you can use if you want to run a silk skill build, but it is probably the most fun. And outside of just silk skills, it's one of the most fun combat abilities in this whole game. You'll notice how aggressive I get to be against Last Judge by having this ability. And more than that, you'll notice why I chose to end this video on Last Judge. Because in the final moment where you are about to die, you can just do this and not care about the biggest troll Team Cherry put in after this boss's death. And yes, this is the first time I've killed this boss on my PC. What of it? Yes, I have grown a great fondness for the cross stitch, knowing that the only things it's truly not useful against are grab attacks that don't deal damage and hazards. That gives me just greater appreciation for it than I ever had before. I thought there'd be more that the cross stitch would be incapable of parrying, but Team Cherry essentially gave next to no limits to this thing. And the only reason that the attacks I mentioned have limits are because they're basically not attacks. One of them is a static environmental feature, the other one is something that deals no damage on the grab itself, which is why it probably got overlooked. So, Thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope you too came out of it with a greater appreciation for the cross stitch and a better understanding that almost nothing meaningful in this game can defend against it. Have a good day, everyone.